Chile's southernmost region is one of the few places on the planet privileged with a magnificent combination of geography, nature, and culture. Here, the last witnesses of remote glacial periods survive alongside the rainy forests and woods that cover the steep slopes and valleys of the Andes mountain range. Deeply complex forests of age-old remembrances. The Patagonian ecosystems are home to a varied and healthy wildlife and safeguard the last populations of the endangered Huemul deer. Colonized by colonial precursors a century ago, these lands are still witness to Creole traditions and cultural guidelines that speak to us of austere lives and of the unflinching Patagonian willpower. These characteristics, added to the enormous sweetwater reserves treasured in this southern tip of the earth, define Chilean Patagonia as one of the world's last natural wonders, and it is this condition that will determine its future development. It has been several years now that the Chilean state is working hard to strengthen the country's image abroad. As much as they can, the regional governments go to great lengths in order for Chilean Patagonia to achieve the highest international standards in clean development. But this scene of future development is under a death threat. The appearance of a project to build 5 gigantic dams in Chilean Patagonia with 1,400 miles of electric cabling would impede the region's complete and sustainable development. This is a project the country not only absolutely does not need, but that would also cause damage, a loss in terms of its heritage, as well as in terms of the country's worth. Not only is it an expensive project, which harms the environment, with negative socio-economic repercussions on the region it is generated in, but it is also a product that does not generate energetic autonomy or security in supply.
Aysén stations are not necessary for Chile. On the contrary, they are an inconvenient alternative.
As we have always said, the Patagonian dams would be bad business for Aysén. It is bad business for Chile, and it is also bad business for the planet, at present and in the future. In the last decades, Chile entered an economic cycle characterized by the free market, along with the growing participation of transnational companies in the local economy. The big corporations have found the exploitation of natural resources, the seizing of waters and administration of energy to be an ideal territory for big business. At present, 74% of the central interconnected system's electrical energy is monopolized by 2 private companies. Endesa, controlled today by Italy's Enel, and the Chilean company Colbún. These companies created Hidroaysén, a joint venture intending to build 5 hydroelectric plants on the Bácar and Pascua rivers, with which they would run 90% of the Chilean electric market.
If this project were to be fulfilled, as Chileans, we would have to withstand receiving energy or depend on energy that is 80% controlled by 2 companies who have in addition formed a monopolistic association.
The firm Transelec, belonging to a Canadian consortium, would be in charge of building and operating a gigantic 1,400-mile electric power line that would join Patagonia with Santiago. The firms argued in their favor that the proposal would result in booming economic growth for Chile. This would then produce an increase in the demand for electricity that would make the construction of the dams indispensable. For the companies, the Hidroaysén project could quickly put an end to the energy crisis, but this, quite simply, is not the truth.
It was sold by the company from the very beginning as a solution to the energy crisis, and already towards the end of Lagos's term of office, the energy minister at the time pointed out that this project would solve the energy crisis threatening the country. It was a case of creating a brutal misinformation campaign for the citizens, because if we were to look at any of the project schedules, we would realize that in the best of cases, the project and all of its 5 stations would be more or less complete by the year 2022 and 2025.
The dams were projected on the Aysén region's main rivers, the Bácar and the Pascua. They both collected the water from 2 enormous Patagonian basins shared with Argentina. The Bácar River, Chile's largest, receives the waters of the General Carrera Lake Basin. As for the Pascua, it is the natural overflow of the O'Higgins Lake. Chilean Patagonia's geography is marked by the southern mountain range, which determines the formation of narrow and long valleys. Aysén intends to build its dams in some of the basin's natural narrowing passages in order to take advantage of the river's steep incline. According to the project, the 5 dams would flood some 14,500 acres, 10,000 of which would be located over Bácar valleys. This may not seem like a very large surface. Nonetheless, the case is that it is excellent land in regions where fertile valleys are scarce, thereby making it the exception rather than the rule. The greatest flood would take place in the Ñadis region, a very fertile valley populated by rural families dedicated to cattle farming. If the Bácar II dam were to be built, all of this would remain underwater, a matter of great concern to all of its inhabitants. During his entire life, Arturo Quinto has had his home in the valley, but with the dam, Arturo and his neighbors would be stripped of this land which has belonged to their families for almost a century. But the Ñadis' potential goes far beyond cattle farming. The valley's beauty and the view of the nearby mountains attract an increasing number of tourists every year, which has resulted in several locals beginning to offer services to travelers. But all of this would disappear forever if the dams were to be built. What honest person could accept such a sacrifice under the guise of misinterpreted progress? On the river Pascua, the dams would not produce large reservoirs, but given that its valleys are so steep and narrow, the surface of the slopes that would remain underwater would be much greater and the loss invaluable. The foot of the hills that border the river Pascua are covered by woods that are home to many species, particularly to Chile's emblematic deer, the huemul. Huemul populations are very vulnerable to the loss of their habitat, this being one of the main causes for its extinction in regions where it has already disappeared. If the dams were to be built on the river Pascua, it is possible that the region's huemul population will suffer a blow that would render it on the brink of extinction. In this way, Chile would not only continue losing a fascinating species, but also one of the emblems that make up its national shield.